Caitlin Clark's first game in the European League had WNBA fans holding their breath in anticipation, and the aftermath didn't disappoint. As soon as the whistle blew, it was as if Clark was saying, "All right, Europe, let's dance." This was the first chance for basketball enthusiasts to cross the pond to see the Iowa sensation up close, and she wasted no time making an impression. For Caitlin, this wasn't just about proving her worth, but embracing a whole new world of basketball where style and flair intertwine differently. In just her first appearance, she put on a show that left both the local fans and her WNBA supporters with their jaws on the floor. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Clark entered the arena with a presence, the kind that seems to say, "Don't worry, I got this." You could almost sense the fans sizing her up, perhaps thinking, "We've seen talent before, let's see what you've got." But Clark? She looked as unbothered as ever. Her reputation for confidence and a bit of swagger isn't new to those familiar with her journey. From jaw-dropping deep threes to her fearless way of taking it straight to the hoop, Caitlin Clark plays with a kind of confidence that can make seasoned pros rethink their approach. And it took all of 10 minutes for that style to shine in her first European stint. The game kicked off, and it wasn't long before Caitlin was making those familiar no-look passes, weaving between defenders like it was a practice drill. The pace in European basketball is known to be different from what Clark faced in college and the WNBA. It's a more fluid game, emphasizing ball movement and court vision, and if there's one thing Caitlin's known for, it's that she sees things happening before everyone else does. Her timing was impeccable, and she threaded some assists that made you wonder if she had her own personal crystal ball tucked away somewhere. It didn't take long for the local fans to catch on, and before the end of the first quarter, they were already buzzing. Clark was moving around with the kind of lightness and ease that says, "This is where I belong." Her defenders looked like they were playing tag, while Caitlin casually strolled from one end of the court to the other. But it wasn't all sunshine and highlights for her. There were a few moments where the European defense showed her that this wasn't the NCAA or the WNBA. Clark got bumped a bit harder than she's used to, and there were a few smirks from defenders who seemed to relish testing the American prodigy. But if anything, it only fueled her competitive fire. As the game wore on, the locals couldn't help but get louder every time she touched the ball. One deep three-pointer from Clark had fans leaping up from their seats, throwing their hands up like she was handing out gifts. WNBA fans watching from afar were already blowing up social media. Every time she made a highlight play, it wasn't just the European crowd cheering. It was an entire online community of WNBA fans sharing clips and reactions. You could almost hear the collective shout of, "Did you see that?" ringing out in living rooms across the United States. While Clark's scoring ability was undeniable, it was her overall court presence that drew the most reactions. She wasn't just playing a game. She was conducting it like an orchestra, pushing the tempo when needed and slowing it down when the team needed a breather. At one point, after making a tough draw to the basket, she had this silly grin, almost like she was enjoying how surprised everyone was. You could imagine her thinking, "You guys haven't seen anything yet." For European fans, Caitlin Clark was a revelation. They had heard the stories, seen the highlights, but there's something different about watching a player live. It's one thing to see her draining threes on your screen and another to witness how quickly she sizes up a defender and leaves them in her wake. The way she orchestrated the game had spectators shaking their heads in disbelief, and every time she pulled up from deep, the entire arena seemed to collectively hold its breath. WNBA fans who had been watching the game's live feed were torn between pride and envy. "That's our girl," they were thinking, but part of them couldn't help but feel like Europe was borrowing one of their stars. And it wasn't just her scoring or passing, it was the attitude she brought. There was a moment in the third quarter where Clark hit a contested three, turned around and gave a look that said, "Are we still doing this?" It's the kind of look that lets everyone know she's not just playing a game, she's making a statement. It's moments like these that define Caitlin as not just a player but a personality. The European commentators were having a field day trying to keep up with her playstyle, and there were more than a few jokes about needing a translator just to understand what she was doing on the court. For WNBA fans, this game was almost a validation of sorts. Here was Caitlin Clark, halfway across the world, making people fall in love with basketball all over again. It was like she had taken everything she learned in the WNBA and decided to give European basketball a taste of what's to come. But for Caitlin, this game seemed like another chance to refine her craft, to explore new styles, and to learn a little more about herself as a player. Every new arena, every unfamiliar defender was just another challenge to be conquered. As the final whistle blew, the crowd gave her a standing ovation, and Caitlin, always aware of the moment, paused to take it in. There was no grand celebration or dramatic fist pump, just a small wave and a nod as if to say, "Thanks, but this is just the beginning." It was classic Clark, unassuming but confident, acknowledging the applause while already thinking ahead to what's next. After the game, fans poured onto social media with their reactions, and WNBA circles were filled with discussions about what Caitlin's European adventure meant. Some were already predicting future moves or speculating about how her experience overseas would sharpen her game for future WNBA seasons. Others couldn't help but laugh at the idea of European defenders waking up the next day with nightmares about that number 22 in white. But amidst all the buzz, there was one thing that everyone agreed on. Caitlin Clark's debut in Europe was more than just a game, it was a statement. This game was a new chapter, not just for Caitlin but for the WNBA as a whole. Clark wasn't the first to make the jump to Europe, and she certainly won't be the last, but there's something about her game that translates no matter the country. It's not just the skill but the flair, the confidence, and the clear joy she finds in every no-look pass and three-point bomb. It's the kind of thing that transcends language, and you could see that in the fans who left the arena still buzzing about what they'd just seen. For now, Caitlin seems more focused on soaking in the experience, learning the ropes of European ball, and doing what she's always done, playing with a style that's all her own. The WNBA might have to get used to sharing one of its brightest stars, but for Caitlin Clark, this feels like the beginning of something big. Her first game in Europe was a reminder to everyone watching that no matter the league, no matter the country, Caitlin Clark is here to play. Even with the initial excitement of Caitlin Clark's debut in Europe, what really stood out was how seamlessly she adapted to the different style of play. Clark didn't just rely on her established talents, but showed a clear willingness to embrace and experiment with the unique nuances of European basketball. This wasn't just a matter of dropping in points or making flashy passes. It was her understanding of spacing, patience, and timing that made her stand out. The way she anticipated movements, not just her own, but those of her teammates, hinted at an evolving level of awareness. Fans on both sides of the Atlantic couldn't help but be impressed by her composure. She took every hit and aggressive defensive stance in stride, often with a knowing smile, as if appreciating the fresh challenges she now faced. There was a noticeable buzz from the audience each time she touched the ball, almost a collective holding of breath, anticipating something spectacular. As Clark continues her European stint, it's clear that this is just the beginning. Whether this journey will lead to her returning to the WNBA with new skills or cementing her global stardom remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, wherever Caitlin Clark plays, eyes will follow. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.